Three. Welcome to another episode of Brazina and Bankston. As always, we are your co-hosts. I am Will Brazina,
Me and Bankston.
and with us today we have our good friend Arnav. Welcome to the show, Arnav.
Glad to be here.
All right. First, let's get started. We're going to start with the big news of college football, and that being the college football playoff selection. And number one was Alabama. Number two was Clemson. Number three was Ohio State. Number four was Notre Dame, with Texas A&M at number five and Oklahoma at number six. So we're going to start with you, Ian. What were your thoughts on the selection?
I think they got all of them right. I think they got Notre Dame right at number 4, but I think they got number 3 wrong. I think that should have been Texas A&M. Because again, I mean, you only have Oklahoma or Ohio State that played 6 games, and like Jimbo Fisher said, you had an SEC team, the toughest conference in the country, toughest division in the country, and they had won 7 straight games over very quality teams, including Florida, who played very close with Alabama in the SEC championship. And you had Ohio State, who I thought needed to show style in the Big Ten championship, and they didn't. They eked out an ugly win against Northwestern.
Arnav, what's your thoughts on this?
I think they got all 4 right, and I will say the Notre Dame pick was a little bit iffy to get over because I did think Texas A&M deserved it with the way they played throughout the season. But Notre Dame is going to be the 4th best team in the country, and I think the playoff committee got Ohio State right as well. I know there was a small sample size, and Fields hasn't done too well the past couple weeks. But I believe Ohio State is a very, very talented team. I mean, you look at their defense. Their defense has been playing outstanding, bar a couple of games, especially that game against Indiana. They really struggled against that Indiana offense. And so I think the committee did well here, and I think they did pick the 4 best teams.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I get like that Ohio State hasn't played many games, but they did win the games that were in front of them, and you can only say so much. I mean, I think the committee did get it right. I mean, Ohio State won their conference championship, so did Clemson and Alabama, and having a close or having a win over Clemson, I think really solidified Notre Dame, which really helped. They made it to their conference championship versus Texas A&M didn't. I mean, I give Texas A&M credit, but the only way that they would have been in if had they played like lights out in their last couple games. And I thought they kind of struggled in those last 3 games. And I think that was like a reason that the committee was like, well, I think they didn't show us enough to for us to leap them over Notre Dame. But my one issue I did have was I think not even the thought or the fact that like Cincinnati wasn't even close. Like I would have expected a number 6 ranked Cincinnati, and so I do feel like it is a little difficult for a group of 5 teams to make it. I mean, it stinks, and I don't want like like some of the media has said where they should divide and make their own like playoff. I don't want that. I don't want the NCAA to like divide like that, and so I think it's better. And I'm not a huge fan of the expansion either, but I just think there needs to be a way for them to make it. You got to like set out those guidelines.
Oh, but again, I mean, I think that people recognize that the only possible year in which a group of 5 team would make the college football playoff potentially was going to be this year. And then to have an undefeated Cincinnati team that really blew out everybody they played, except for one game. Um, and then to have them not, and then to have them not even be really close to being in. I mean, the highest they were ever ranked was 7. I mean, I think it just shows that, like, in this current format, a group of 5 team will not make it in the top 4.
Yeah, exactly. And the other close one was Houston. I remember Reese Davis talking about that and how Houston had beaten Oklahoma. They were so close, and then they lost. That would have been the only one. You really got to play tough teams. And I think if Cincinnati was as good with a full year, I don't know, a full year would have changed everything, and I think it helped. But they had a they had at least one or two decent non-conference games that they could have played, which potentially could have helped them, like depending on how those teams did. But
Right.
I
They
the change.
so they had Nebraska on there in their non-conference schedule to play Nebraska in Lincoln, and I assume Cincinnati would have likely won that game, and that potentially would have helped them, depending on how well Nebraska would have done with a full schedule.
Yeah,
But still, I'm not sure if it would have been enough to get him in.
yeah, and who knows, full schedules could have helped plenty of other teams
Yeah.
more or less. So I mean, it's a whole different thing. So, but now we're going to run through this year's bowl season. So we had the inaugural Myrtle Beach Bowl where Appalachian State beat North Texas 56-28. Um, the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, which Nevada beat Tulane 38-27. And the Ruth Claim Boca Raton Bowl, BYU beat UCF 49-23. Georgia Southern won the R plus L Carrier New Orleans Bowl 38-3 over Louisiana Tech. Memphis uh, beat FAU in the Montgomery Bowl 25-10, and um, in the New Mexico Bowl, Hawaii won 28-14. Buffalo beat Marshall 17-10 in the Camila Bowl. Number 19, Louisiana scored 31 to UTSA's 24 in the Serve Pro First Responders Bowl. In the Lending Tree Bowl, Western Kentucky and Georgia State. Georgia State won 39-21. In the Mortgage Cure Bowl, in the Liberty, that was a close one too. Liberty beat number 12 Coastal Carolina in overtime on a blocked field goal, 37-34. Number 21 Oklahoma State won 37 to number 18 Miami's 34 in the Cheez-It Bowl. Number 20 Texas beat Colorado big 55-23 in the Bolero Alamo Bowl. The Duke's Mayo Bowl. Wake Forest won 28-42 Wake Forest lost 28-42 to Wisconsin. And in the Goodyear Classic Cotton Bowl, Florida lost to number 6 Oklahoma 55-20. So those were the rundown of the past bowl games that have been played up till now, and the upcoming ones will be hopefully pretty good. We've seen some good ones, some lopsided ones, and it's just been an interesting year all around. But what is your take on the bowl season? Why don't we start with Arnoff?
There's a couple things that stood out to me. First off, it's really weird seeing all these bowl games happen with little to no fans. That's really something that takes away from the atmosphere. Because I know people love to travel to bowl games, support their teams. A couple things that stood out to me, like team-wise. First off was Marshall. Marshall went 7-0 to start the regular season, and then proceeded to lose their next four, including this bowl game. And so for Marshall, that was really just like I was keen on them to start, and then they started to slip up. Their defense gave up a lot of points those last 3 weeks of the regular season when they lost three straight. And this loss to Buffalo, which was a fairly decent team in the MAC, really kind of sets the tone for next year. I mean, what is Marshall going to do going on from here? And then another thing, obviously, you mentioned the Liberty Coastal Carolina block kick. That was a really insane game to watch. And then lastly, there was a team, Georgia State, I want to say. They played Western Kentucky. Their quarterback, his name escapes me right now, but he played lights out. I mean, he was making really great reads. And so Georgia State's quarterback is probably one who won't go drafted, but I could see him having a good career in the NFL as like a solid backup, because the way he played in that game against a tough Western Kentucky defense really stood out to me. And so those are some of my takes from the bowl game.
Hop on to that point. I mean, Marshall, I think, they have lots of room to grow over the next couple of years. I mean, they did really good this year, but I believe freshman quarterback they have leading their
Yeah.
team, that's
Yep.
really good. They did really well, and so I think they'll be good for at least 2 more years, and so it'll be solid. So that was good to see, and so
Yeah, so my thoughts really are with Florida. So Florida has now had these seasons, the last 5 seasons, starting with about Jim McElwain, where they've gone solid, around like a two-loss regular season, um, slip up in the SEC championship. Granted, they competed more, but again, I mean, they lost in the bowl game again, which Florida has not done great in their last few bowl games. And also, I mean, a lot of questions about their defense and whether they're going to keep defensive coordinator Todd Grantham. He's definitely got to be on the hot seat, or if he's fired after this season, also. And thinking about like really like where does Florida go? Because I mean, now we've seen it within the last about like 4 or 5 seasons is where they're hyped up a lot and win their division and they're ranked high, but I mean you never feel like they're a playoff quality team.
I think it's interesting to see how well they've progressed over the past few years. I mean, they really weren't too great, like even a few years ago, and now they've really stepped it up the past 3 years, and I think they're moving in the right direction. I mean, they are Florida; they've got that name behind them, so that'll help them. And again, they're in Florida; they can recruit all those kids from Florida, and so I think it'll help them. I just think they had decent quarterback play in their bowl game, and so that's by their backup quarterback. And so I think that's hopeful to see him doing well against a solid Oklahoma team who um, did really well in the backstretch of the season. But I think they've got a good team moving forward. I think they can make the SEC championship again next year potentially. So it's really between them and Georgia for who's going to control the east portion of the SEC. And so really it boils down to 4 teams in the SEC, although it's really hard to beat Alabama. So
Yeah, but again, I mean like Florida's made a lot now because they also won the division 2 times under Jim McElwain, and now they've won it 2 times under Dan Mullen, and they've never really they've never really been close to winning the SEC championship. Because I mean, even this year losing by 7, they were always fighting from behind.
yeah. My thoughts on this bowl season is on Texas, and although they were decent this year and they won against a good ranked Oklahoma State team and were close with a strong Iowa State team, I just think it confuses me how they decide to show up only in the bowl games normally. Like they don't win the Red River rivalry when it matters, and they decide to go out and they beat a team by quite a bit, and it makes them look so much better. And then they come out and they do poorly the next year. I don't understand it. To me, it makes no sense. And then my other take is I'm disappointed that the Rose Bowl isn't in Pasadena. It's always so great to watch that open stadium and to see everything uh, like the sunset and everything through that game. It is great view for that game. And so, I mean, I understand wanting the families there, but it's just disappointing not having it in Pasadena. We do get, I think, the Rose Parade still, but a little disappointing there.
Yeah. I think the Rose Bowl always belongs in Pasadena, and it needs to be put back there because when you think of the Rose Bowl, you think of the Rose Bowl Stadium in Pasadena.
All right, now, Ian, it's time for your weekly trivia.
So, who is the only team to ever be shut out in a national championship?
My guess is trying to run through these. I want to say it was LSU. I don't know why. I keep thinking that. Arnav, what do you think?
That's kind of where I was going. I know it was 2012 Alabama and then 2013 Alabama. Both of them played extremely well in those national championship games. I want to say 2012 was against LSU and 2013 was against Notre Dame. And so, and I know Notre Dame scored. I know they scored like at least 2 touchdowns or something
Mhm.
like that. So I'm gonna go with you here. I'm gonna go LSU in 2012.
Yeah.
I want to say it was a year, or the game was in 2013, but it was a 2012 season.
Yeah.
Correct. So it was LSU played in the year 2012 against LSU. Bama won 21-0 in a game that resulted in 6 field goals or 5 field goals from Alabama, and then only 1 touchdown with 3 minutes left. You know, so a 21-0 win in a game that was almost all field goals.
Oh wow. Okay, that's how that year went between those two teams. But now we're gonna move on to our picks. Ian, why don't you start us going through these
Yeah.
games? And we'll go with Arnoff can pick first, and then Ian, then I. And so,
Yeah, so tomorrow we have West Virginia and Army facing off in the AutoZone Liberty Bowl, and in that one, I am taking Army. I think they match up decent against a Texas A&M defense there with the triple option, and I think they end off their season strong, and feel like they've been snubbed this season from the rankings. In the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, nine.
let's let Arnoff get his pick in there.
Yeah. I'm gonna agree with you there. I think Army has done really, really well running the ball this season. I mean, they've got a great offensive line. I love watching their offensive line move because they move so well with each other in that triple option system. And so I'm gonna go with Army. And then like West Virginia hasn't been doing too hot on defense as well. They've struggled in their Big 12 games against those really good offenses of the Big 12. And so yeah, I'm right with you there. I'm gonna go with Army.
Yeah, I'm taking Army as well. I mean, there's a couple games, especially like that Iowa State one. They got blown out. West Virginia did, and so I think Army's had some close games with some good teams. So I see them. I think they win this game.
And then in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, we have number 9 Georgia and number 8 Cincinnati. In that one, I am actually picking Georgia. I think their defense shows up against that offense, where Cincinnati has been averaging about 34 points per game. I don't think they get really near that this time. And I think Georgia has just enough offense
I'm right with
to
you
win that
there.
one.
I'm gonna go with Georgia winning. I want Cincinnati to win, but I think Georgia will win. And my question is, if Cincinnati does win, do they claim a national championship like 2017 UCF? I I hope they
No.
do, but we'll see what happens. First, they got to win the game, and then we'll see what happens.
I'm taking Cincinnati in this one. I mean, they've got a strong defense there. And so, I mean, both these teams have a strong defense. So I think it'll be a good, potentially tight matchup. But I think Cincinnati pulls it out.
And then in the VRBO Citrus Bowl, we have it number 14 Northwestern taking on Auburn with interim head coach Kevin Steele there, as Gus Malzahn was fired just a couple weeks ago. In this game, I am taking Northwestern. They are typically very motivated and play well in their bowl games, coming off of strong seasons under Pat Fitzgerald. And I really don't know how much Auburn wants to be in this game with a new head coach. And I just don't know how focused they're going to be.
Yeah, Northwestern played really, really well against Ohio State, and I think that's all credit to Pat Fitzgerald and the way he's running the team. And so I'm going to pick Northwestern. I'm right with you there. Auburn's going to struggle, especially with that interim head coach.
Yeah. I mean, Northwestern's got a strong defense, and they've shown that this year. And not only is it difficult for Auburn with an interim head coach, they're off and on with all their games, quarterback play wise, and so it's you never know who you're going to get in their quarterback, and so we'll see how with Bo Nix, and so we'll see how well they do there. But I'm taking Northwestern in this game.
And then in the TaxSlayer Bowl, we have number 23 NC State against Kentucky. In this game, I'm taking NC State pretty heavily. I really liked how they finished off the season. I really liked what I saw from their quarterback play. And I'm just really not sold on what I saw from Kentucky this season going 3-5.
I'm gonna pick the upset here. I'm actually gonna pick Kentucky. I think NC State is a really really good team, and they deserve to be ranked probably top 20. However, I think Kentucky can pull this one off, just because it's another chance for them to get a big win and get some momentum heading into next season. Kentucky's really turned around their program from what they were like 0-8 going into week 9 somewhere. I want to say it was either them or Kansas a couple years ago that were like winless through 6 games. And so I'm really intrigued to see how Kentucky does in this game against NC State. And I think they can pull off the upset here. So that's probably my biggest upset pick this week. I'm picking Kentucky over NC State.
I think this will be a good game. I think I'm intrigued. I'm going to take North Carolina State here, but I mean, they've shown versus like Liberty and teams like that there's areas you can take them and beat them. So I think this is a coin flip game for me, but I'm going to take North Carolina State.
And then in the Outback Bowl, we have number 11 Indiana and Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. In this game, I'm taking Indiana. Despite what I really like in year one under Lane Kiffin and most especially their offense, I think Indiana's defense really shows up, plays physical, plays tough, and I think they pull out a nice win over Ole Miss.
I'm gonna go there. I'm picking Indiana over Ole Miss. I think Indiana's offense has been really, really has played well this season, and they've gotten a lot of help from their defense. And Ole Miss, I'm not too sold on them. Just overall as a program, I'm not the biggest fan of them. We'll see how they do next year, obviously with a more set schedule. But I'm going to Indiana.
You have to get Indiana as well. I mean, they're 7 points away from beating Ohio State. I mean, they could be in the playoffs for all we know from a game like that. But I think although Ole Miss had like a really strong offense this year, especially in that Alabama game where they held their own against them offensively, I'm taking Indiana. Indiana's a well-rounded team, so I think they win that game.
And then in the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl, we have number 25 Oregon coming off of their Pac-12 championship win versus number 10 Iowa State coming off of their Big 12 championship loss to Oklahoma. In this game, I am taking Oregon. I think they'll be really motivated to end off their short season with a big win over Iowa State. And also overall, I think they match up quite well with Iowa State.
I'm going to go with Iowa State here. Like you said, I think this is going to be a really good matchup. I'm definitely going to watch this one. It'll be a fun one to keep my eyes on throughout bowl season. But I'm not going to pick Oregon here just because I can't see their defense matching up well against this Iowa State offense that has produced so well in the Big 12. I mean, we said it before with West Virginia, like the way that they dominated West Virginia's defense was pretty crazy because you don't expect Iowa State to do things like that. And so I'm going to go with Iowa State here. They have all the momentum heading into next year. And I'm actually going to say, like, I think Iowa State has a really great shot to win the Big 12 next year.
I think they, with how well they did this year, I'm going to kind of use Ian's logic. I think they want to do really well, finish out strong with Brock Purdy. I mean, I think they figure out what their issues were there in that Big 12 championship game, and I think they adjust on them, and it'll be a good game. But I think Iowa State comes out on top. I think Iowa State gets the win here.
And then in the Capital One Orange Bowl, we have number 5 Texas A&M versus number 13 North Carolina. In this game, I am taking North Carolina. I think overall they have the better offense, and they have better quarterback play there with Sam Howell. Also, in Texas A&M's defense, I think they definitely feel that they got robbed of a playoff spot. And I think we've seen it quite a bit where teams that feel that they got robbed of a playoff spot aren't typically very motivated in their following bowl game. And I think North Carolina wins a very close game over Texas A&M.
I'm going to pick North Carolina as well. I'm right with you there. I like the way that Howell's been playing for the Tar Heels. I think their coach has been really has taken his group of guys and really made them produce to their maximum capabilities this season. And I'm right with you there. I think Texas A&M is going to be pretty disappointed they missed out on a playoff spot. And so I'm picking North Carolina. I'm actually going to pick North Carolina to win big here. I see them probably 2 scores over Texas A&M. And so go Tar Heels.
I'm taking just the opposite. I think that Texas A&M is going to be mad that they didn't make the playoff, and seeing that Clemson's played North Carolina, it becomes a common opponent. But I think they want to show the committee just how good they would have been. Because if we have a blowout game in there and they blow out North Carolina, it makes the committee look bad, or everybody rethink what the committee thought. And so I think they're going to want to show their dominance and show why they should have been in there. Because I think it just makes less of a case for them if they don't win. So I think Texas A&M wins. But now for the playoff semifinals. First in the granddaddy of them all, the Rose Bowl. And we have number 1 Alabama versus number 4 Notre Dame. Why don't we start with Arnav? Who are you taking in this game?
It's got to be Alabama for me. I mean, Mac Jones, Devontae Smith, they're too good. And Notre Dame got kind of exposed their defensive issues, got exposed in that loss to Clemson. And so with the way that Devontae Smith has been playing, I hope he wins a Heisman, first of all. And I expect Alabama to win this one and win this one very soundly.
Yeah, I'm also taking Bama by 2 or 3 touchdowns. The only shot Notre Dame, I think, has here to even compete going into the fourth quarter is to dominate the time possession and just try to keep that Alabama offense off the field. Because otherwise, if they don't, I mean, as it showed against Clemson, they're going to get boat raced. So I'm taking Bama big here.
Yeah, and I mean, it's shown. You can try to play strong defense, but Alabama's just so strong. I think they're going to win this game. I'm taking them, but it's the only 2 games that have been close for them were Florida and Ole Miss, and both those teams threw defense out the window and just ran with them. So you have to be step for step with Alabama and hope they make a slip up and you can capitalize on it. You can't mess up against Alabama in this game offensively. If you lose 1 or 2 possessions, you could stop 1 or 2 possessions. It's kind of over unless you have a really strong defense. But
I mean, if they get down in a 10-0 or 14-0 hole, as they did to Clemson, it's over.
Yeah, it'll be tight. I mean, I'm taking Alabama for this one.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for those Notre Dame cornerbacks. They've got a real tough task ahead of them with Devontae Smith, obviously, and I'm going to look at the other wide receivers for Alabama. I don't know their names off the top of my head. Obviously, I haven't been following Alabama too much throughout the season, but expect them to have a big day. You could see Notre Dame probably double team, maybe even throw a 3rd guy towards Devontae Smith to try and slow him down. And so the key to Alabama's game is going to be distributing the ball to people that are not Devontae Smith, and we'll see how Mac Jones does with that.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult because, I mean, if they triple team Devontae Smith, you leave John Mechie wide open, who's going to, like, streak to the end zone. I mean, they got so many weapons. It's super difficult. I mean, though, I think the one weakness for Alabama is that center. But for Nick Saban, probably the next guy up. I mean, even defensive-wise, they have Patrick Surtain, who's done pretty well on defense, who's done really well on defense. So I do see this as a really strong team, and if they can look back to where they were mid-season and like have that defensive stoutness that they were mid-season, I think it's too much for Notre Dame. So on to the next game. In the second game of the College Football Playoff semifinals in the Sugar Bowl, number 2 Clemson faces number 3 Ohio State in a rematch from last year. So who do you have in this one?
In this game, I'm taking Clemson in a very close game. I think overall they just have the better offense. They've been more efficient lately on offense. I think it'll be, probably around the 20s in terms of scoring. I think Ohio State's defense really puts up a good fight also. But at the end, I think Clemson comes through with the bigger plays at the end to win.
Ohio State has never beat Clemson. That series is 4-0 in Clemson's favor. And I'm actually going to say this is Ohio State's year. I think Clemson is going to struggle against Ohio State's offense, not because Ohio State is going to do anything wrong, not because Clemson's going to do anything wrong. I'm a big believer in Justin Fields, and I think he's going to right the ship with this extra time he has had to practice with Ohio State. So I'm going to pick the upset here. I'm going to go Ohio State over Clemson.
I think it'll be interesting. I mean, Ohio State had that extra time. Not only did they get Justin Fields, get more reps and be able to look at tape and stuff, and he knows what's going on in there. And the Big Ten was like, oh, we're going to move the 21-day restriction down to 17. So now Ohio State has more players that they can play that game in. But, I mean, on the other side of the ball, you have Trevor Lawrence and, ETN and so many guys that are there, not Ross, but plenty of guys in their wide receiver core that have done. Rodgers, that's what I was thinking of. Amari Rodgers, who's done really well. I mean, they're just stepping up. And their defense, Brent Venables is going to come out. And I think last year's Ohio State team was much better. So I think this makes it a little bit more difficult for them. So I'm taking Ohio State in this game. But as always, I am Will Brzezina.
I'm Ian Bankston.
And with our special guest, Arnav, thank you so much for joining us and have happy holidays.